The first part of the flight had been peaceful. Passengers chatted quietly, read books, or drifted off to sleep. But everything changed without warning. The plane suddenly jolted in turbulence, followed by a strange and unsettling announcement. "Attention, everyone! This aircraft is now under our control." No one knew that Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso's transitional leader, was quietly seated in row 178, traveling undercover from Paris back to his homeland. Dressed in plain clothes, wearing a cap and sunglasses, he blended in like any other passenger. He'd chosen to return discreetly, avoiding the risks and formalities of an official state visit. But now that decision had placed him in the middle of a hijacking. There were 182 other people on board the Air France flight heading to Ouagadougou, including tourists, business travelers, and citizens returning home. The hijackers had taken over the cockpit and were issuing demands: $10 million and the release of 3 prisoners from France's La Santé prison. That was their condition. Had they known who was sitting quietly among the passengers, their demands and their strategy might have been very different. The hijackers struck while the flight was cruising over Malian airspace. A flight attendant, mid-service, noticed 4 passengers suddenly standing. At first, she thought it was an argument until she saw the glint of a gun. Panic rippled through the cabin. The tray fell from her hands, hot tea splashing across the aisle. "Nobody move!" shouted one of the men, his voice accented in French Arabic. "Do as we say and no one gets hurt." People froze. Some sobbed quietly, others clutched their phones or whispered prayers. 2 hijackers rushed to the cockpit. The other 2 remained in the cabin, one near the front, one guarding the rear, keeping watch. One of them announced they would begin collecting electronic devices. Traoré, thinking quickly, slid his phone into the seat pocket before they got to him. The hijackers were still trying to establish control. It was chaotic and uncoordinated. One of them returned from the cockpit and spoke to the passengers. "This plane is under our command. We want $10 million and the release of our comrades in France. If that happens, you all go home." Traoré watched carefully. The man wasn't calm. His hands trembled slightly. His voice revealed stress. This wasn't a seasoned militant. It was someone acting out of desperation, maybe ideology. As time passed, the plane began circling above Mali, following the hijackers' orders. They wanted to stay airborne to buy time for negotiations. Traoré scanned the cabin around him. An elderly Burkinabe woman beside him trembled with fear. A few rows ahead, a mother tried to soothe her children. Across the aisle, 3 French businessmen whispered nervously. Trying to calm the woman next to him, Traoré leaned slightly toward her. "Don't worry," he whispered. "We'll be okay." She looked at him with watery eyes. "You're Burkinabe, aren't you, my son?" "Yes, Mama," he replied softly, "and we'll all go home together." Just then, a commotion near the cockpit broke his train of thought. One hijacker dragged a middle-aged French passenger forward, yelling that negotiations were moving too slowly. "Maybe they'll listen if we send a hostage," he shouted. Traoré knew the moment had come. He could reveal himself, trade his identity for the safety of the others. But that could trigger a diplomatic storm. Instead, he made a bold move. "Stop," he said calmly but firmly. "Negotiations take time. A rushed move could end badly, for all of us." The hijacker swung his gun toward him, startled. "Who are you to speak like that?" "I'm just a passenger," Traoré answered steadily. "But I understand negotiations. Using force now will only make things worse." The hijacker stared at him, unsure. "Why are you so calm? Who are you?" "I've worked in diplomacy," Traoré replied, choosing his words carefully. "I've seen how these things unfold. Let me help." There was a tense pause. The hijacker turned to his comrades. After a hushed exchange in Arabic and French, their leader nodded. "All right, diplomat," he said mockingly. "Let's see what you can do. Come to the cockpit." Under the watchful eyes of the passengers, Traoré stood and walked calmly to the front. The elderly woman he passed whispered a quiet prayer for him. Inside the cockpit, the pilots looked exhausted. One of the hijackers manned the radio, and a negotiator's voice came through the speakers. French, skeptical. "Who is that? Is this a setup? Another hostage?" "No trap," said Traoré calmly. "Just a man who wants peace and safety for everyone on board." He turned to the hijacker leader. "What exactly are you trying to achieve?" The release of 3 men and some money? Yes, said the leader. Our brothers have been imprisoned unjustly in France. We want them back. Who are these brothers? Malik El-Zaim, Riyad Hamoudi, Omar Banani, the hijacker answered. They supported the Tuareg resistance in Mali. They're not terrorists, they're freedom fighters. Traoré recognized the names. These men had been accused of attacking French military bases, but they were also symbols of resistance against French influence in Africa. Traoré understood the anger, but not the method. And the money, he asked? To continue our fight until France is out of Africa. Traoré saw their convictions were real, not driven by money or power, but ideology and frustration. He asked their names. The leader was Youssef, and his comrades were Hakim, Jamal, and Ahmed. He kept his tone calm. Youssef, I get it. I really do. But governments don't like to look weak. Hostage situations are long, complicated, and dangerous. We are not terrorists, Youssef snapped. I understand. You want justice. But have you tried other ways? Legal appeals? International courts? We did, Youssef said bitterly. No one listened. Our brothers have been locked away for 7 years. Traoré now understood the root of their desperation. They weren't cold-blooded killers. They were men who felt ignored, trapped, and angry. Still, he knew this situation could spiral fast. What's your plan after this? Let's say they give in. How will you escape? Youssef hesitated. We plan to land in Mali, refuel, and cross the border. They'll catch you the moment you land, Traoré warned. Special forces will be waiting. It'll be over. Fear flickered in Youssef's eyes. But there might be another way, Traoré continued. Let me mediate. Maybe we can push your case onto an international platform without violence. It's too late for that, Youssef muttered. We've already crossed the line. There's always a way back, said Traoré quietly. But the first step is keeping the passengers safe. Just then, the radio crackled. The French negotiator spoke again. We're considering your demands, but to build trust, release some hostages, children and elderly passengers. Youssef looked uncertain, but eventually agreed. Fine, but we want fuel first. You'll get it in Bamako, the negotiator said. Land at Bamako airport. Release the hostages there. Youssef agreed, but Traoré knew this was a trap. Once the plane landed, special forces would be ready to storm it. That would be the end for Youssef and his group. Tension grew in the cockpit as the plane turned toward Mali. Are you sure about this? Traoré asked. Youssef narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? If you land there, you lose control. They'll take you out the moment those wheels touch the ground. Fear deepened in Youssef's face. So what do you suggest? Traoré leaned forward, calm and focused. Change the route. Head to Niger instead. France's influence there is weaker. You'll have more room to negotiate, and maybe, just maybe, a way out. Traoré looked at Youssef seriously. You promised to release the children and elderly. Let's still do that, but keep the plane in the air, he suggested. Also, we need to shape your demands more clearly. Think beyond just money and freedom. Ask for better conditions for the prisoners, a fair trial, even international oversight. Youssef hesitated. Why should I trust you? Maybe you're working for the French. Traoré gave a small smile. I'm African, like you. I understand your frustrations about France's role in Africa, but I believe there's a better way to fight. I use different tools, not weapons. That seemed to strike a chord. Youssef didn't argue. Instead, he left the cockpit to speak with his group. Left alone with the pilot and co-pilot, Traoré kept his calm. But the pilot looked at him with suspicion. Who are you, really? He asked in a low voice. You don't talk like a regular passenger. You sound like someone trained. Traoré didn't confirm or deny. He just smiled again. Moments later, Youssef returned with his team. We'll go with your idea, he said. We'll change course to Niger and release the children. We'll stay airborne. But Traoré asked, how do you plan to release them in the air? What's your plan? Parachutes? Youssef froze. He hadn't thought of that. Instead, Traoré offered, make a video. Show the children and the elderly are safe and unharmed. Send it as a sign of goodwill. Youssef nodded. It made sense. Slowly, Traoré was gaining his trust. It was becoming clear the hijackers had acted out of emotion, not logic. They hadn't fully thought things through. Youssef radioed the negotiators. "We're diverting to Niger and sending a video of the children. The original plan is canceled." The negotiator sounded confused. "All arrangements were in Mali." "Plans have changed," Youssef replied firmly. "Fuel will be taken in Niger. We'll remain airborne until our demands are taken seriously." Once the radio went silent, Traoré leaned in again. "It's time to calm the passengers. Offer them water, food, show that you care about their well-being. That will help ease tension." Youssef agreed and ordered his men to pass out snacks and water. He also had them bring the children to the front to appear in the video. When Traoré returned to the cabin, the passengers were still gripped by fear. The elderly woman sitting beside him looked up with worry in her eyes. "What's happening, my son?" she whispered. "Talks are progressing," he said softly. "The children will be shown in a video to prove they're safe. We're working toward a peaceful end." 6 children, ages ranging from toddlers to about 11, were brought forward. Their mothers clutched their hands, trying to hide their own fear. Traoré knelt to meet the children at eye level. "Hi, I'm Ibrahim," he said kindly. "What are your names?" The kids hesitated, but slowly began to answer. Traoré smiled and nodded at each one. "I know this is scary, but everything's going to be okay. Want to help me play a little game? Let's shoot a video showing how strong you are. That way, you'll be able to go home sooner." The children looked at him curiously, their fear softening. His calm voice and gentle manner helped them relax. Even the mothers looked less panicked. He turned back to Youssef. "Comfort is powerful," he said. "Panicked mothers and frightened kids only make things harder." Youssef looked at him curiously. "You've done this before, haven't you?" "I've had crisis training," Traoré replied, telling the truth without revealing who he truly was. The video was filmed. The children waved to the camera and said they were fine, following Traoré's instructions. The recording was then sent to the French negotiators. Time passed slowly. The aircraft circled above Niger, its fuel levels gradually falling. Youssef looked troubled. "What if they don't give us what we asked for?" "Think carefully," Traoré said. "What are you truly trying to achieve? The release of your brothers? That's unlikely in the short term. But what about better conditions? A fair legal process? International pressure? That can happen." Youssef considered his words. "Maybe you're right, but if I back down now, it'll look like failure." "No," said Traoré. "It's not backing down. It's being smart. You're adjusting your strategy." At that moment, a voice came through the radio. "Youssef," said the French negotiator, "we've agreed to form an independent commission to look into the prisoners' cases. Also, they will be moved to better facilities. But release isn't possible at this time." Youssef turned to Traoré, unsure. "What now?" "This is progress," Traoré replied. "Now push for a safe landing and a peaceful release of everyone on board." Youssef hesitated. "And what about us? What will happen to me and my men?" Traoré could see it clearly now. These were not hardened criminals. They were young men driven by ideas, not a real plan. "If this ends peacefully, it will count in your favor," he said. "You didn't hurt anyone. That matters in court." Youssef and his team spoke quietly among themselves. After a while, Youssef agreed. He picked up the radio again. "You promised to form a commission and improve their conditions," he said. "Now let's talk about landing safely." The negotiator sounded relieved. "You can land in Niamey. We'll make sure everyone is safe." But Traoré stepped in again. "Wait, if you land in Niamey, special forces will be waiting. It's risky." Youssef looked at him. "Then what do you suggest?" "Land in Ouagadougou," Traoré said. "Burkina Faso is not under France's shadow. It's neutral. You'll be safer there, and so will your cause." Youssef raised an eyebrow. "Burkina Faso? Isn't that still controlled by France?" Traoré gave him a knowing look. "Not anymore. Things have changed." As the plane neared Ouagadougou, Traoré knew the end was near. He turned to Youssef for one last push. "When we land, the plane will be surrounded. But if you surrender peacefully, no one will harm you." "They'll imprison us," Youssef said. "Yes," Traoré replied, "but you'll be alive, and you'll still have a voice to fight for your brothers in the right way." Youssef took a deep breath. Okay, we'll land and release the passengers. The plane finally touched down in Ouagadougou. Special forces stood at a distance but didn't approach. First, the children and the elderly were let off. Then Traoré turned to Youssef. I need to leave too. Why? Youssef asked suspiciously. How can you help us now? Traoré took off his sunglasses and cap. Because I'm Ibrahim Traoré, he said calmly, president of Burkinafaso. Youssef's face went pale. That's not possible. It's true, Traoré confirmed, and I want to help you. If you surrender now, I guarantee your safety. You'll face a fair trial here. For a moment, Youssef looked tempted to act. His hand moved slightly toward his weapon. You could take me hostage, Traoré said calmly, but it would end badly. Special forces are watching. Harm me, and you'll never leave this plane alive. Youssef held his breath, then slowly dropped his weapon. What do you want us to do? He asked. Lay down your arms. Release the passengers. Walk off this plane peacefully. Youssef agreed. One by one, the passengers left the aircraft. Traoré led them out, followed by the hijackers, now calm and unarmed. As he stepped onto the tarmac, soldiers and officers stared in disbelief. Sir, you were on that plane? One officer asked. Yes, said Traoré, and I gave my word. These men are surrendering peacefully. Later that day at the presidential palace, Traoré addressed the media. Today, he said, we saw the power of dialogue over destruction. These young men believed in a cause, but they chose the wrong path. In the end, understanding won. When asked why he had kept his identity hidden, Traoré replied, revealing who I was could have made things worse. My mission was to protect lives, and we succeeded. One journalist asked what he had learned from the ordeal. Violence solves nothing, Traoré said, but patience, understanding, and human connection, they can change everything. A true leader doesn't isolate himself. He stands with his people, because real power doesn't come from titles. It comes from the trust of the people. And so, once again, Ibrahim Traoré reminded the world that leadership isn't about fear or force, but about heart, wisdom, and the courage to choose peace.